Very important mission. And I told Pete, we should use some of these dangerous cities as training grounds for our military, National Guard, but military.
And so by serving in this mission, they will be protecting any protesters at the ICE facility.
Oh, that's gotta hurt!
Let's talk about something that we need to see more of. Those in positions of military authority vocally pushing back against the lies from this administration and staying true to their oath to protect Americans. Well, this week, Oregon National Guard Commander Brigadier General Alan Gromwald did something that in today's political climate is all too rare, but nonetheless extraordinary. He pushed back against the president as he sends troops into Portland. A move the White House framed as, quote, restoring order, but most Americans recognize that it's just authoritarian 101. According to a letter from Gromwald to his troops obtained by journalist Ken Klippenstein, he said, quote, some people in Oregon won't understand or won't support this mission. Some might even be hostile. But he reminded them, quote, you are citizens first. And that oath doesn't come with an asterisk that says, quote, only when I agree with the mission.
To answer your question, I don't want to speculate on what level of training they will be trained in or what they will be authorized to perform as far as rules for the use of force. The Title X headquarters will provide that training to them. It is my understanding, however, that protective crowd control will be one of the things they're trained upon. And I will provide my advice to the Title X commander that Oregon National Guard men and women they serve two purposes. One, to defend America, and two, to protect Oregonians. And so by serving in this mission, they will be protecting any protesters at the ICE facility. That's my desire. Now, to answer your question, full force is not a doctrinal term that the Army uses. So I'm not sure exactly what that means, and I don't want to speculate as to what level of force.
In defending what Portlanders are saying about their city and the need for troops.
Well, Senator Brock-Smith.
Thank you, General, for being here and your presentation, and God bless you and our National Guard as they move forward with this deployment.
Chair Manning, may I make a request of this committee?
Sir, please.
And your colleagues in both the House and the Senate?
Please.
My number one concern is the protection and the care of my soldiers while they're deployed on this mission. And many of our citizens will not see a distinction between our Oregon National Guard, citizen soldiers, and ICE agents, Federal Protective Service agents, and other federal agents. And I would just like to request of each of you, and please pass this on to your colleagues, that our soldiers we're the home team. And our job is to protect and serve Oregonians, and we follow lawful orders, and that's what we're doing, and to please treat them with dignity and respect as fellow Oregonians. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
And here's the thing, right? Even before Gromwald's statement, a federal judge had already blocked Trump's plan to federalize the Oregon Guard. The ruling stated that the administration had, quote, failed to demonstrate a lawful justification for deploying troops against civilians. And that's perhaps because the man in charge of the country is allegedly based his decision on almost 5-year-old footage from Portland. I mean, we are literally governed by a complete moron, guys, honestly.
One thing I have to say is that Washington, D.C. was almost as bad. I don't know what could be worse than Portland. You don't even have stores anymore. They don't even put glass up. They put plywood on their windows, but most of the retailers have left. But Washington, D.C. was so bad.
And legally, it's a mess. Regardless, the Posse Comitatus Act, which no is not a Harry Potter spell, even though it sounds like it, explicitly forbids using the military for domestic law enforcement.
Attorney General Schwab, are you familiar with the Posse Comitatus Act?
Posse Comitatus Act is a law, long-standing law in our country that makes clear that in our country, military are not engaged in policing American citizens on American soil.
Absolutely, but isn't that what President Trump is doing right now, bringing in the military to police the civilian population in this district.
But the only loophole to that is the very word that Trump can't seem to get out of his mouth, except, of course, when his supporters attempted to actually commit one, the Insurrection Act, which is supposed to be used for, well, actual insurrections, not for protesters in big inflatable suits with signs.
Trump wants to invoke the Insurrection Act to punish anyone who opposes him.
If you take a look at what's been going on in Portland, it's been going on for a long time, and that's insurrection. I mean, that's pure insurrection.
I know all of this is frightening, and I don't want to unduly alarm you, but you need to be aware of this imminent danger. It's unfolding very, very rapidly. He's following a 4-point plan that you need to know about. Step 1 is to deploy ICE into so-called blue cities run by Democrats. These masked and armed ICE agents are wreaking havoc on American cities and violating due process. They're arresting people outside immigration courtrooms. They're raiding homes in the middle of the night and detaining children and adults, including American citizens. They admit to using racial profiling. These aggressive tactics are provoking demonstrations, which leads me to step 2, exaggerate the scale and severity of the protests. Trump has described Portland as a war-ravaged city burning to the ground, but Portland's own police chief has debunked that.
City of Portland is about 145 square miles. This is one city block. Even the events that are happening down there do not rise to the level of attention that they are receiving.
And Trump continues to describe Chicago as a war zone. But recently that's because of ICE agents who've sprayed tear gas, pepper balls, and rubber bullets into crowds of journalists and protesters gathered outside a detention facility. But that doesn't seem to matter to Trump. It's all part of a plan to establish a pretext for step 3, deploy National Guard troops. Trump is deploying hundreds of National Guard troops from red states like Texas into blue states like Oregon and Illinois against the wishes of Democratic governors. This is continuing to enrage an already outraged public, which is the whole point. Trump wants to stoke actual violence, which would make it easier for him to unleash the final step in his plan, which is step 4, invoke the Insurrection Act. The Insurrection Act empowers a president to federalize the National Guard and use the U.S. military to suppress civil disorder, insurrection, or armed rebellion against the government. Everything done by Trump has been a preamble to invoking this act and being able to unleash troops against his perceived political enemies who oppose his regime in advance of the 2026 midterms. It would be the ultimate step in Trump's authoritarian power grab. There are fights happening in the courts right now that could put a stop to all of this. Even Trump's own appointed judges in the federal courts are standing in opposition to him. And you have a role to play too. Trump and his enablers want violent confrontations in order to justify their moves. So please, remain peaceful if you protest, or if you encounter ICE agents or National Guard troops where you live. Do not give Trump what he wants. Instead, record what you see and post it. Send it to local media. Do whatever you can to chip away at the false narrative Trump and his cronies are trying to build as a pretext for unleashing their power grab and stripping away our freedoms. And please help spread the word about what Trump is planning by sharing this video.
I mean, as Oregon's own Attorney General had said, quote, "This is not a third world country."
Portland is burning to the ground. You have agitators, insurrectionists. All you have to do is look at the television, turn on your television, read your newspapers. It's burning to the ground. The governor, the mayor, the politicians are petrified for their lives.
So these are the facts that we have. I just want to give some police data. 2 arrests were made at protests over the weekend and 36 arrests at protests in 4 months. What do you, I think a judge theorized that maybe he was looking at some old newsreels. I mean, what is he talking about and what is really happening?
Who knows what he's talking about most of the time, right? I can say I'm a Michelin star chef, but it doesn't make it the case. He says things, and that's why the courts are here, because this is a president that is known for making his living on, saying inflammatory things on social media, impromptu, some things that feel very unhinged from reality. But that's why our court systems are so darn important, right? We're able to come in, present real facts, as you've noted, and a judge that was appointed by President Trump sat there and said, hey, the facts that you're presenting in court just aren't true.
Now let's talk about how the public feels about all this, because it turns out, well, Americans aren't exactly thrilled about tanks on the streets. A YouGov survey found that 58% of Americans oppose deploying U.S. military to respond to protests in U.S. cities. just 29% support it. And among independents, opposition climbs to 63%. And even 1 in 4 Republicans say that it goes too far. Another Quinnipiac poll found that 61% of voters think that using active duty troops inside the country is, quote, unconstitutional. And nearly 70% said that it would make civil unrest worse, not better. See, this is not a split nation, despite what Republicans will claim. This is a bipartisan, absolutely not issue. And remember, this is the Oregon National Guard, right? They're not outsiders. They're people who live there. Their families live there. So when Trump says he wants to federalize them, what he's really saying is, I'm sending you to patrol your own neighbors. And it's all happening while the administration is still losing support in almost every measurable way. Recent polling has showed that Trump's approval rating has dropped further since floating the military in the streets idea, including double-digit drops among independents and veterans. So if this was meant to project strength, it's having the opposite effect. And to General Gronwald, lastly, thank you for doing what too many in power are failing to do at the moment, standing up to the president.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to add the MeidasTouch podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts for new updates every single day.